There are seasons in life when everything appears to be in motion, yet nothing truly shifts. Effort is present, consistency is present, even sacrifice is present, but results seem delayed, answers feel suspended, and breakthroughs remain just out of reach. It creates a strange tension in the human experience, where visible effort does not match visible outcome, and the heart begins to question what is really happening beneath the surface of life. This is not an uncommon experience. Many reach points where they begin to wonder why progress feels blocked, despite doing everything that seems right, why doors remain closed even when preparation is strong, why opportunities appear close enough to touch but never fully materialize. These questions do not come from laziness or lack of effort. They come from the deeper frustration of unseen resistance, and this is where the mystery begins to unfold. Because not every delay is a sign of failure, and not every pause is a sign of denial. Some delays are the result of unseen dimensions that operate beyond human effort alone. There are layers to life that cannot be accessed through physical strength, strategic planning, or emotional intensity. There are principles that govern timing, access, and alignment that go deeper than visible circumstances. When life is viewed only through effort, everything seems like a matter of trying harder. But when life is understood through covenant reality, a different picture emerges. One where access, alignment, and spiritual legality play a far greater role than struggle alone. This is where the idea of breakthrough begins to shift. Breakthrough is often assumed to be the result of persistence meeting opportunity. But in deeper understanding, breakthrough is not just about effort meeting timing. It is about alignment meeting access. And access, in its most profound sense, is not always earned through repetition. It is often governed by spiritual principles already established beyond human negotiation. This is why some individuals appear to experience unusual acceleration in their lives. Doors open for them without proportional struggle. Opportunities align without excessive delay. Progress feels smoother, even in difficult environments. It is not always explained by talent or effort alone. It is often connected to alignment with deeper spiritual realities that govern flow and access. At the center of these realities lies a principle that carries weight beyond human understanding: the blood covenant. The blood covenant represents more than symbolic meaning. It represents a foundation of divine agreement that influences access, timing, and direction. It is not something activated by emotional desire alone, nor something sustained by temporary effort. It is a governing principle that operates with consistency once understood and aligned with. And here is where the mystery becomes even deeper. Many people are not lacking effort. They are lacking access. They are not missing potential. They are missing alignment with what has already been established through covenant reality. This creates a situation where hard work exists, but acceleration does not. Where desire is strong but flow is inconsistent. Where persistence is present, but breakthrough remains delayed. This is the silent tension that many feel, but cannot easily explain, and it is often misunderstood as personal failure, when in reality, it may be a matter of deeper spiritual structure that has not been fully engaged. When this understanding begins to surface, perception shifts. Life is no longer seen as random sequences of struggle and success, but as a system where alignment determines access, and access determines experience. Breakthrough is no longer viewed as something distant and uncertain, but as something that responds to deeper laws already in motion. This is why the focus must shift from frustration to understanding, because frustration without understanding only increases exhaustion, but understanding creates direction. It reveals that delay is not always the final word, and closed doors are not always permanent conclusions. Instead, they may be indicators that a deeper key is required, and that key is not found in more pressure or more struggle, but in alignment with covenant reality that governs access beyond visible effort. This is where 2026 begins to take on a different meaning, not as another cycle of waiting, but as a potential turning point where understanding determines experience, and alignment determines breakthrough. And everything begins with recognizing that what looks like delay may actually be a deeper invitation to step into a higher level of access than effort alone can provide. Human effort has undeniable value. It builds discipline, develops skill, and creates momentum in life. Through effort, progress is made, habits are formed, and goals are pursued with consistency. But even with all its strength, human effort has a boundary. There is a point where persistence alone cannot break certain limitations. no matter how intense or sustained it becomes. This is where many individuals find themselves in cycles of frustration. They try harder, plan better, push further, but the results remain unchanged or slow. It creates a silent exhaustion, not because effort is wrong, but because effort is wrong, was never designed to carry the full weight of access, timing, and spiritual alignment. There exists a deeper layer of operation beyond natural effort, a dimension where outcomes are not governed solely by physical strength or mental strategy, but by covenant alignment. This is where the principle of covenant becomes essential to understand. Covenant is not just a religious concept or symbolic idea. It is a governing structure of access. It represents an established agreement that defines relationship, authority, and flow, and unlike effort, which must be repeated constantly to maintain results, covenant operates on a different foundation. It is rooted in agreement, not exhaustion, in alignment, not struggle. This is why covenant introduces a completely different kind of reality. In covenant, access is not merely the result of pushing harder, it is the result of being positioned correctly within an established agreement. It means that certain outcomes are not unlocked by increased effort alone, but by entering into alignment with what has already been set in place. This shifts everything, because now, the focus is no longer only on what more can be done, but also on what has already been established. It changes the question from performance to positioning, from struggle to structure, from human limitation to covenant access. The blood covenant, in particular, represents the highest expression of this principle. It signifies a binding agreement that carries authority beyond natural systems. It is not temporary, emotional, or conditional on human fluctuation. It is established, sealed, and carries ongoing implications for access and alignment. When this truth is understood, it reframes how breakthrough is interpreted. What was once seen purely as a matter of effort begins to reveal deeper layers. Breakthrough is no longer only about pushing through resistance. It becomes about aligning with a system that already Bari's provision and access within it. This is why some individuals experience acceleration that seems disproportionate to their effort. It is not always that they are working harder than others, but that their alignment is producing a different level of access. Their effort is not operating in isolation. It is operating within covenant structure, and this is where transformation begins to take shape. Because when covenant becomes part of understanding, effort is no longer wasted in isolation. It becomes directed, amplified, and positioned within a system that supports its outcomes. Struggle is reduced not because challenges disappear, but because resistance is no longer the only force at work. There is now alignment working alongside effort. This is the hidden power that changes outcomes. Effort alone pushes against limitation, but covenant alignment introduces access that effort alone cannot produce. It creates a reality where certain doors open not just because of persistence, but because of established agreement. This does not remove responsibility. It refines it. It does not eliminate action. It aligns action with higher structure. It does not discourage effort. It places effort within a framework where results are no longer solely dependent on human capacity. And this is where understanding becomes powerful. Because once covenant is recognized, frustration begins to lose authority. Delay is no longer interpreted as permanent blockage. Instead, it becomes an indicator that alignment, not just effort, must be examined. In this way, covenant does not oppose effort. It completes it. It transforms effort from isolated struggle into aligned operation, from uncertain pushing into structured access, from limited human capacity into covenant-backed progression. And when this understanding is carried forward into 2026, it becomes clear that outcomes will not be defined by effort alone, but by how deeply alignment with covenant principles is understood and applied. The blood covenant is not merely a spiritual concept. It is a divine legal structure that governs access, authority, and relationship within the unseen order that influences visible reality. It operates with precision, consistency, and permanence, functioning as a binding agreement that cannot be altered by circumstance, emotion, or time. To understand its depth, it is important to recognize that covenant is not based on temporary feelings or fluctuating human effort. It is based on agreement that carries legal weight in the spiritual realm. Once established, it defines rights, access, and positioning that extend beyond natural limitations. This is why the blood covenant stands apart from all other forms of spiritual understanding. It is not simply about belief. It is about established authority. It is not dependent on changing conditions. It is rooted in an unchanging agreement. It does not shift with human inconsistency. It remains active because of what it represents at its core. In this structure, access becomes a legal matter rather than an emotional one. This means that what is experienced in life is not only influenced by desire or effort, but also by alignment with covenant rights. Provision, direction, and breakthrough are not just random outcomes. They are part of a system governed by established agreement. The blood covenant represents the highest level of this agreement. It symbolizes a sealed connection that defines relationship and access in a way that goes beyond natural negotiation. It is not fragile, and it is not conditional on human perfection. Instead, it stands as a permanent structure that influences flow, timing, and opportunity. When this principle is not understood, life is often interpreted only through visible effort. Progress is measured solely by what is physically done, and delays are seen as permanent obstacles. But when covenant awareness is introduced, interpretation begins to shift. What once appeared as closed doors may actually be misaligned access. What once seemed like delay may reflect timing within a larger structure. What once felt like limitation may actually be a lack of covenant understanding, rather than absence of provision. This is where perception begins to change, because covenant introduces the idea that access already exists, but must be understood and aligned with. It is not about chasing what is absent, but about recognizing what is already legally available within the structure of agreement. The blood covenant specifically represents this level of access in its most profound form. It signifies that certain realities are not earned repeatedly, but are established through agreement that carries ongoing authority. It is not based on temporary effort cycles, but on a continuous state of alignment with what has been set in place. This creates a different understanding of breakthrough. Breakthrough is no longer viewed as something that must be forced into existence through pressure alone. Instead, it becomes the result of entering into alignment with a system that already holds provision within it. It is the movement from external struggle to internal positioning within covenant structure. This is why understanding matters as much as effort. Without understanding, effort can feel repetitive and exhausting. With understanding, effort becomes directed and purposeful. Without covenant awareness, progress feels uncertain and delayed. With covenant awareness, progress becomes structured and aligned with established access. The blood covenant, therefore, is not just symbolic. It is operational. It functions as a governing principle that influences how access is experienced. It defines what is already available and how it becomes activated through alignment. And because it is legal in nature within the spiritual order, it does not respond to instability or confusion. It responds to alignment, awareness, and positioning within its established structure. This is why some individuals appear to experience consistent flow in areas where others struggle. It is not always due to increased effort. It is often due to deeper alignment with principles that govern access. Their experience reflects a system that is operating with recognition rather than resistance. When this understanding is applied, life begins to take on a different structure. Instead of constant striving for uncertain outcomes, there is a growing awareness of what has already been established and how to align with it effectively. And as 2026 approaches, this awareness becomes even more significant, because outcomes will not only be shaped by effort, but by how deeply covenant structure is understood, respected, and aligned with. In daily life, understanding covenant is powerful, but understanding alone does not create transformation. The real shift happens when understanding is translated into alignment, because covenant is not only something to know, it is something to walk in, live by, and consistently remain positioned within. Alignment is the bridge between access and experience. Even when a covenant is established, its benefits are not fully realized unless there is alignment with its principles. This is not because the covenant is inactive, but because experience is shaped by positioning. What is already available must be met with the right internal posture for it to be fully expressed in daily life. This is where many people experience inconsistency. There may be awareness of spiritual principles, even belief in covenant reality, yet daily life does not reflect the stability or flow that should follow. This gap is not always due to lack of truth. It is often due to lack of alignment with that truth in practical thinking, expectation, and behavior. Alignment begins internally. It starts with how reality is interpreted. When circumstances are viewed only through visible limitation, alignment weakens. When interpretation is anchored in covenant awareness, perception begins to shift. Instead of reacting to delay as final, there is an understanding that timing operates within a larger structure. Instead of interpreting obstacles as permanent blockage, they are seen as indicators that positioning may need adjustment. This internal shift is critical. Because covenant does not respond to panic, confusion, or instability. It responds to alignment, steady, consistent, and anchored awareness of what has already been established. Walking in alignment means maintaining a consistent awareness that life is not only governed by visible systems, but also by deeper covenant structure. It means refusing to let temporary conditions define permanent expectation. It means holding steady even when external evidence seems slow or uncertain. This creates internal stability. And stability is essential for flow. Because instability fragments focus, it divides attention between fear and expectation, between doubt and belief, between visible reality and covenant truth. But alignment unifies attention. It creates consistency in thought, direction, and expectation. This is where transformation begins to take shape gradually. As alignment strengthens, interpretation changes. Delays are no longer seen as abandonment. Seasons of waiting are no longer viewed as absence of movement. Instead, they are understood within a framework where timing and preparation work together under covenant order. This perspective reduces internal resistance, and when resistance decreases, flow increases, because much of what blocks progress is not external opposition alone, but internal misalignment. Conflicting thoughts, inconsistent expectation, and emotional instability can create an internal environment that does not fully reflect covenant reality. But when alignment is restored, internal resistance begins to dissolve. This does not mean challenges disappear. It means response changes. Instead of reacting with fear, there is steadiness. Instead of giving up in delay, there is patience anchored in understanding. Instead of interpreting silence as absence, there is trust in structure that operates beyond visible signals. This is walking in covenant alignment. It is not passive. It is intentional. It requires daily reinforcement of truth, consistent correction of perspective, and refusal to let external noise redefine internal understanding. Over time, this creates a noticeable shift. Life begins to feel less chaotic. Decisions become clearer. Emotional reactions become more stable. There is a growing sense of direction that does not rely solely on external validation. This is because alignment is producing order within. And when order exists within, experience begins to reflect that order externally. In this way, alignment becomes the key that unlocks covenant flow, not by changing the covenant itself, but by positioning the individual to fully experience what has already been established. As this alignment deepens going into 2026, the difference between struggle and flow will increasingly depend on internal positioning rather than external effort alone. Because covenant access is constant, but alignment determines how consistently it is experienced. At this final point, everything comes into clarity. The struggle was never meaningless, but it was never meant to be permanent. The delay was never proof of absence, but it was also never meant to define identity, and the effort was never wasted, but it was also never designed to operate alone without alignment. Because the deeper truth is simple yet powerful. Breakthrough is not only about what is pursued, it is about what is aligned with. And covenant reality makes this even more direct. The blood covenant is not distant. It is not inactive. It is not waiting to be created through more struggle or more pressure. It is already established, already operating, already carrying access that has not changed with time, circumstance, or season. But access without alignment remains underexperienced. This is why the moment of decision becomes critical. Not tomorrow, not in a future season, but now, because what defines 2026 is not just time passing forward, it is awareness being activated, it is understanding becoming operational, it is alignment replacing confusion, and it is covenant truth moving from concept to lived reality. The call is not to do more blindly, but to realign consciously, to stop interpreting life only through visible outcomes, and start recognizing deeper structure, to stop measuring progress only through delay and acceleration, and begin understanding that covenant operates beyond surface-level timing, to stop allowing external conditions to dictate internal stability. This is the turning point, because without decision, awareness remains theoretical. But with decision, awareness becomes transformation. So the call is to step into covenant awareness with intentionality, To recognize that life is not only shaped by effort, but by alignment with what has already been established. To understand that breakthrough is not always delayed because it is missing, but because positioning may not yet fully reflect access. And once that recognition settles deeply, responsibility becomes clear. Not responsibility to force outcomes, but responsibility to force outcomes. IAI to align thinking, expectation, and internal posture with covenant truth. This means daily awareness, daily correction of perspective, daily refusal to let temporary situations redefine permanent covenant reality. It means choosing clarity over confusion, even when circumstances feel uncertain. It means choosing alignment over reaction, even when delay feels uncomfortable. It means choosing stability over emotional instability, even when external signals feel inconsistent. Because covenant responds to alignment, not panic. And over time, consistent alignment produces visible change, not always instantly, but inevitably. Clarity begins to increase, confusion begins to fade, emotional instability begins to reduce, and a deeper sense of direction begins to emerge that is not easily shaken by external noise. This is how covenant breakthrough becomes reality and experience, not through sudden emotional moments, but through sustained alignment. And as 2026 unfolds, this principle becomes even more significant. Because the difference between limitation and acceleration will not only be effort, it will be understanding. It will be awareness of covenant access. It will be willingness to align consistently with what has already been established. This is the invitation, to stop living beneath what is already available, to stop interpreting delay as finality, to stop operating without awareness of covenant structure, and to begin living from alignment rather than striving alone. Because once alignment is established, everything begins to shift, not because life becomes easier instantly, but because access becomes clearer, direction becomes stronger, and breakthrough becomes less about struggle and more about flow within established covenant order. So the final call is this: step into covenant alignment fully, commit to awareness, anchor your thinking in issued truth, and allow 2026 to become not just another year of effort, but a year of covenant breakthrough, alignment, and undeniable transformation.